Today, I am thrilled to share this cup of tea with my good friend, my tea friend, Norwood Pratt, who actually is called by the Chinese the American tea sage. Now, coming from the birthplace of tea, China itself, it's quite an honor, isn't it, Norwood?
How did you know that that occurred? I'm so proud to be mentioned in the introduction to the classic of tea in the Library of Chinese Classics. That's like being knighted, don't you think?
Yes, it is indeed. Because when I picked up another piece of giant work of yours, besides this lovely book of Tea Lovers Treasury, which, by the way, is a fascinating book and well done. And also, I have the pleasure of reading your second book, which is your dictionary, tea
Oh, yeah.
dictionary, with Chinese and English. And I thought to myself, oh my. And this is before I knew that you were crowned the American Tea Sage. And I thought that was a well-deserved title because you had incorporated the Chinese name into this tea
It
dictionary.
was the first time in an English language book on tea, the Chinese name was in print there.
I love it. So since your groundbreaking book, The Tea Lover's Treasury, first enchanted the tea world in 1982, you have been tea's literary voice and reviving America's tea consciousness and transforming how the American continent thinks about this divine beverage. So for over 4 decades, Norwood has witnessed and guided America's
Yes.
tea renaissance from its infancy to its remarkable growth. When you started, it was $1 billion in annual sales in America. Today is 14 billion. That's 14 times over the span of 40 years, Norwood.
Now that looks like our tea friends and we have made some progress in this country.
Indeed, just a little bit of progress. 14 times, a little bit over 14 times. You've done a marvelous job, my friend, along with many tea experts, I'm sure. And this is why we are having a call today, and for you to share your amazing tea stories along this journey, people whom you inspired and they inspire you and made an impact in your tea journey and the American tea industry. I want to start with your brilliant book. And by the way, your tea brother, Bruce Richardson, he loved your book. And he says that he used to study it all the time when he first started his tea journey. And like I said, you had me at the prologue. Can you paint the picture for me just a little bit about Mrs. Barker and her old teapot and
Oh,
her pernicious custom of drinking tea?
I certainly can tell you. My early American ancestors included Penelope Barker, who was a prominent citizen in the 1700s, a prominent citizen of Edenton, North Carolina, and she and her friends got together to declare that they would do without tea. This was part of the lead up to the American Revolution, and it was the Edenton Tea Party. It preceded before the Boston Tea Party, and there were five or six others: Charleston, South Carolina,
Right.
somewhere in New Jersey, New York. Other places had people renouncing tea. And Penelope Barker and her prominent social friends sent a letter to the London Times, announcing that they wanted all their friends in London to realize that they had renounced the pernicious custom. It was questioned by some doctors if tea was good for you. So that pernicious custom of drinking tea, which was only paying dues to the crown, was no longer going to be tolerated in Edenton. That's what they said. And that pot came down in the family and was disputed by all the cousins who would have it. But I have drunk tea made in Mrs. Barker's teapot, and I thought it was better because it tasted pernicious.
I love that line, by the way. I giggled when I thought, oh my gosh, what a great writer. I loved it.
That's,
Those are the daughters of liberty, isn't it?
that's right. And it was widespread amongst the British colonies here. And of course, I had some ancestors involved.
I love that tea has such a impact and deep history, the roots in our families. And now, did you get that teapot? Did it come to you?
It did not. I think it went to my cousin Carol Hayes after much discussion, by the way, amongst the first cousins. But wherever it is, Mrs. Barker is there with it.
Yeah.
So far, America has been a footnote in the story of tea, which is over 5,000 years old. And as a country, we're not yet 400 years old. But after all, we are just now emerging from our first dynasty. And if this is the end of our first dynasty, if we like China, we can look forward to 20 or 30 more.
Exactly. Thanks to Americans, Tea Sage, like you, and all the wonderful friends that you have in the tea community, America is now contributing to about 18%, almost 20% of the tea consumptions in the world. So I said that we've done well, my friend.
My role has been to be a friend to all the friends of tea. And I am a friend to any friend of tea anywhere in the world. We have a language in common, which of course is tea. And it does wonderful things for those who love it. It makes people happier. I think it makes them healthier. And I know that it makes them a lot less quarrelsome. We get along over a pot of tea.
We get along.
In a way that other drinks might make it more difficult to get along.
Which I love, which I love this line that you wrote, where you very famously said, pleasure is far too serious to take lightly. And you've described your transition from wine to tea as moving from the sacrifice of sobriety.
Yes.
Now, how did this shift shape your philosophy about life's pleasure and ultimately lead you to become the American Tea Sage?
I had the perfect training. I was, first of all, addicted to wine, and I had the training from California's finest winemakers in how to taste and what made it taste like that. It's, as the Chinese would say, with grapes as well as with tea, it all comes from heaven, earth, and man. Heaven is everything above the layer of the soil.
Yeah.
Earth is everything below it, and man is the human factor.
Right.
And so, with thus prepared by wine, I was able to start enjoying something that is much more subtle than wine. Tea is surely the subtlest thing our tongues can detect. It is too much to say tea always has a taste. Sometimes it just has an effect on the palate. And so you have to become very sensitive in order to really enjoy the very best teas. And this is not to say that other people are excluded from enjoying tea. You don't have to train as a taster in order to get the pleasure from it. But pleasure is much too serious to take lightly. And so I like to taste it as closely as I could. And that's why I was interested in the plant itself, what it has to say, wherever it comes from. That's tasting.
I love that because in a Chinese philosophy, and as you so poignantly described, the three elements, 天和地利人和, it is the heaven, the earth, and humanity in all in harmony. And I love that. And it is tea to the T because that's how tea is made from heaven, the best thing in heaven, and the best thing on earth, the terroir, and made by good people.
That's right. And so I had the great advantage moving from my birthplace, North Carolina, to San Francisco. And that was the only place where that book on tea could have been written. We had everybody there in the city, San Francisco. Of course, we had the largest Chinatown anywhere else.
Mhm.
We had a Japantown. We had more Indians than you could count. We had people from all over the world. And so to learn, that was the ideal place to learn about tea. And that book that you're holding in your hands was the first book,
Yeah.
the previous edition, the
Mhm.
first book in English to tea, seriously, the way people have been writing about wine for
Wine.
centuries. The first book in over 50 years in English. And it could only have been done in San Francisco.
That
So
was the golden age of San Francisco.
it was one of the leading golden ages.
Yes.
And I have to say that to have that opportunity opened me and everybody who read me to a world that had been closed to this country. And we had not become, when I wrote my first book about wine, we had not become a wine consuming society. Now we are, we Americans. We were not a tea consuming society either, Christy.
And now we are.
And now we are well on our way, aren't we?
83% of Americans now drink tea. So you've done well,
We're
my
not
friend.
alone.
Yeah.
We're not alone.
And I love how you describe this. And I agree with you that only a person living in San Francisco can describe like this. I love it. It says, no pleasure is simpler, no luxury cheaper, no consciousness altering substance more benign.
Well,
That's how you describe tea. I loved it.
yes, and I stand by that. I have tried a great many consciousness altering substances, starting with Burgundy, though soon I hit the harder stuff, as Dylan said. But of all of the things you can put in your body that will change your frame of mind, none is subtler and none simpler and gentler than our favorite drink, tea.
I love it. And there's another line that I love. And I'm still in prologue, by the way. You said that one puzzling thing tea can teach us is how stories and legends affect the taste of things. I find it completely true. And so that's why when I was doing my tea documentary, when I discovered the legend of the stream of the nine windings, and it was the nine dragons, the nest of nine dragons,
Yes.
it just elevated everything I did, and it had a lot of impact on me on the storytelling.
Yes. I have floated down that stream, and I had a Chinese comrade who could decipher the characters engraved in the stones
Yes.
on the cliffs alongside the stream. And the people have been doing just what you did, just what I did for thousands of years. And the tea is growing on the slopes on either side of the stream. And you can almost imagine what it tastes like as you float past.
Now, what captured your imagination the most when you were traveling through Wuyi Mountains?
Now, what captured it the most were the yans. A yan, you see, the tea from Wuyi at its best is yancha.
Yeah, Yancha. Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
That's
The rock
the
terroir.
cliff tea.
Yes.
Cliff tea. Now,
Yes.
when I woke up in Wuyi with my Chinese tea teacher, Roy Fong,
Oh,
he stepped out in the dawn light and he said, "See that rock?" And I said, and obviously you couldn't miss it. He said, "That is a yan." And of course, the yans, Wuyi, look the way Walt Disney would have pictured China.
it's truly mystical and fantastical.
These
Yes.
stones
Yes.
that are covered with tea plants, a lot of them.
Yes.
And they have, and the tea plants that have evolved there are the best ones for oolong,
Yes.
these things. And so there must be, 18 or 20 different varietals of tea that are growing in Wuyi Mountains on these different yans. And
Yes.
each varietal has its own peculiarities, its own look as a plant, its own taste as a drink. And of course, we all love Wuyi tea, and there are no better oolongs to be found on the planet. And you can imagine the thrill for me to be there also with my teacher who had opened to me the whole universe of China tea, the homeland of tea. I was privileged to meet him the day before he opened Imperial Tea Court. And he said, "We're not open." Didn't say go away. So I went right in.
That's a tea person for you. Didn't say go away.
That's right. He had a sign out front that said "cha," so I knew there was tea indoors.
Now, have you written the book then?
I had already written my first tea book, but of course, China tea had been illegal. I won't say illegal, but Nixon had not visited Mao Zedong, and trade was at a standstill. And so we had no access to the great China tea outside of San Francisco's Chinatown.
Of course.
I had learned everything I could in Chinatown. And then finally, here's this sign, "cha."
You can read it, right?
Here is, I discover, here is the first traditional Chinese tea house ever to open in North America.
Wow.
And I pushed the door open to be told we're not open yet. It's true, they didn't open till the following day. But I entered anyway, and here Roy Fong and his wife Grace, who became my teachers and dear friends, had the greatest teas of China, which I never expected to see available in this country. Yeah. So Roy said, he came in anyway, and then he just wouldn't leave. And indeed, I wouldn't leave. There was no better opportunity to learn about China tea from, after all, Roy is a Taoist priest.
Correct, yeah.
So he had much to teach, and I would be happy to learn, and that turned me around and made me a teacher too. Oh. I could go anywhere and say, "Roy Fong says." Of course, I should know because I spent hours at his elbow and we would taste teas together.
Roy truly is a legendary figure in Chinese tea in America. He truly,
that's right.
In a time when we didn't have access to Chinese tea, Roy was the frontier and the pioneer.
That's right. And so then, given what I had learned from Roy, I was able to spread the word further and further. And now, if you look for it, you can find plenty of China tea. And if you've got the right friends, you can find excellent China tea.
Exactly.
I might mention Roy Fong. I might mention Jason Chen. I might mention fellow round eyes like Mike Harden.
Your round eye, yes. I tasted Roy's pu'er tea. It is out of this world.
Yes.
and spectacular. Now, let's talk about another favorite friend, tea friend of yours that you helped in the early days, the Harneys. Tell me about those amazing pioneering days of the Harneys.
That's a story that's continuing today because we are dear friends and in regular contact. In fact, just today, FedEx picked up and carried the last of my tea library, which I'm donating to Michael Harney for him to find a good home for it.
Oh,
And
wow.
so here is a collection of books on tea, not all of them in English, which has found a good home. And that's how it's been with the Harney clan and myself since 1980, when I wrote a letter to the owners of Serum Tea, in this minuscule company that I had discovered in Salisbury, Connecticut. And the guy who answered the letter said, I just bought this company, and basically, I don't know anything about tea. Do you? Can you tell me anything?
Now, was it an inn then? Did he start it as an inn?
This was the beginning of the friendship between John Harney and me. He is the man who had just bought Serum Tea and had not yet renamed it Harney Fine Teas. And so he and I had a lot to talk about. And after a while, we were collaborating in every way we could think. I did. I think I wrote everything that was ever published as Harney Teas.
My goodness.
And for some years there, because I was, after all, a writer, and John didn't have the gift. So, what was needed, labels and news and things like that. Anyway, later on, John said to me, I'm having this, we will call it a tea summit, and I want you to please come. And the people at John's living room, there was a gaggle of journalists, the editor of Town and Country magazine, and others perhaps less distinguished than she, but still a good representative selection, and myself, along with Bruce Richardson and Jane Pettigrew from
Oh,
London.
wow. Okay.
And so we were the principal speakers. There was a guy from the Maritime Academy, Dr. Robert Gardella, who was an expert on Chinese tea exports in the 1800s, which taught me a whole lot. I don't know if the journalists were taking notes, but I was. Anyway, that was the first tea summit. And it was the time when when Bruce, Jane, and I first met face to face, along
My
with John
goodness.
and Arnie. And that really started something.
My
Uh,
goodness. What
and
year was that?
that would have been
93. Okay.
So John and I had been in contact for at least 10 years at that time. And later on, John said, I'm changing the name to Harney and Sons Fine
Oh,
Tea.
my goodness.
And I said, but John, your sons aren't in the business with you. John was a man of faith. He said, just wait. And sure enough, it wasn't that long before I was introduced to Mike Harney and then his brother Paul. And we are stalwart friends from that hour. And so anyway, we've had a good many adventures together and saw each other at every opportunity. And John was an indefatigable ambassador for tea. And so we've made a pretty good pair, I think.
And from that humble beginning to now an American tea company doing tea business worldwide with
That's right.
250 employees beyond his sons and 250
Oh, yeah.
employees.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That
This is one of our
tremendous.
one of our great American success stories, not just a
Yes.
tea success story.
Yes, American
And,
great
and,
success
and
stories.
it is one of, I won't say many, but a good many that we have today that we didn't have when our tea renaissance began.
Yes. Now,
Yeah.
what do you think, Norwood, is the magic ingredient that, as you say, made that as a startup, an entrepreneur, literally just a believer, he didn't even know about tea, but
Right.
it was an entrepreneur decided to make a go of it. And then now it's a global business. And this is beyond tea, you are right. It is an entrepreneurial American spirit. What do you think is the magical ingredients that help make it happen?
There is no substitute for a Harney. And when you combine several Harneys, you've got a force of nature. And the force of nature behind them all was John's wife, Elise Harney, my very dear friend who's over 90 now and not slowing down. Anyway, Elise, like me, has seen it from the first. And besides the natural ability of these charming and very enterprising people in the Harney family, tea, Christy, is a calling. It's a calling. You have it. I have it.
Yeah.
John Harney discovered he had it.
Yeah.
Mike Harney has it in spades. And most of our tea friends, Bruce Richardson, for example,
Yes.
and most of the others we could name.
Roy Fong, yes, absolutely.
And so you don't decide that you're going to do tea. Tea decides you're going to do it. Tea that follows you. And there's really no other explanation for those who entered it, entered that world, and why didn't the others? They didn't have the calling. Now, if you have the calling, then somehow or other you're led. One thing you discover is that in the world of tea, you don't have competitors. You have colleagues.
Yes.
We're all,
Yeah.
it's always a trade. You were saying, I can let you have some of my yan cha, but I've only look, I've only got 10 kilos, and Valerie and I are going to drink one of those, and that means, well, I can let you have. So thus, you're dealing all the
We
time
can
with
share.
colleagues,
Yes.
and you respect, and there's friendly rivalry, of course, but it is a collegial and friendly environment, not a competitive, cutthroat one.
I think that's why I felt the kindred spirit with you when you use the word tea brother with Bruce Richardson. I'm your tea sister, and you're my tea brother.
Right. That's right. And one of my dear tea sisters is Marianne Dayon, who, like John Harney, somebody I'd never heard of, who calls up from out of the blue and says, I hear you can tell me a thing about something about tea. And what do you charge? You don't charge. You come over and have tea and we'll talk about it and see what I can do to help you. And so anyway, Marianne, who is French, said her real ambition was to grow tea in France. Do you know that right now she and her husband Alex have several acres of tea growing in the Pyrenees Mountains right down on the Spanish border? And they're going to make good green tea down there.
Oh, that terroir. I've been
That,
to the Pyrenees Mountains.
that's right. We're just praying for enough sun this year. And she's in love with matcha,
Yes.
the ground
Yes.
tea that you consume, leaf and all. And so I am anticipating great matcha from Marianne Dayon this
Oh,
year. And her taste is so elevated that she's going to make the finest tea that France has ever tasted, and she's going to charge accordingly, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure you get some.
Well, yes, I'm going to certainly apply.
What? Now, you mentioned also another person, your tea friend, Devon Shaw,
Yes,
as your
yes,
real tutor, your
yes.
tea tutor. Can you talk about that? About he was teaching you about black tea.
Well, that's right. Devon Shaw was born in India. He's a Gujarati, the people from Gujarat, right around Bombay, and they are the business people of India. And his father had moved the family to South India, and that's where Devon grew up. His father was the headmaster of a school, and in the hot summers would send his son to stay with his aunt. His aunt was married to the manager of a tea estate up in the Nilgiri Mountains. And so Devon spent his summers from age 6 on playing in the tea gardens with children of the workers whose life it was to grow and make tea. And so when it was time for him to go to college, what do you think he wanted to study? He wanted to study tea. Now, of course, he had a strong streak of business sense being Gujarati. And so he became very educated in the tea business. And we met when he was almost 25 years old. He had just arrived in America. And he had a friend who introduced us. Norwood, you should meet Devon. He's just here from South India. And so I happened to have a sample, the very first I'd ever received, of Nilgiri tea from his homeland. And said, look, Mr. Shaw, we weren't friends yet. This is tea from the Havakal estate in Nilgiri. And so he examined this leaf very closely and said, yes, it is from the Nilgiri Mountains, all right, but it is not from Havakal estate. And so I was duly impressed and said, show me how you can tell that. Christy, in 3 or 4 minutes, he showed me more about what this tea leaf revealed than I had learned ever up to that moment. And so when we looked up, I said, will you become my teacher? And from that hour, we were tea brothers, and we liked to spend all the time we could together. And as soon as he was in LA, he opened India Tea Importers.
Ah,
And so I wanted to help him as much as I could. We were, after all, friends. But I said, now look, Devin, let me tell you about some other teas besides those Indian teas you're all about. And so I introduced him to China tea,
oh,
which you couldn't find out about in India, but he was now in California, boy, and I'm the man to tell you about it. The next thing the question was, what will we call it if it's not India Tea Importers? So it became International Tea Importers, ITI.
spectacular.
And
Now
that's
you're passing that tea knowledge around.
That's right. And so I was able to introduce a lot of people to Devon and introduce Devon to a lot of people. And Devon was not just one of the best tea tasters that's ever been born. He was one of the best tea businessmen. And he could see opportunities that nobody else even spotted. He told me at the outset, what this country needs is a good cup of chai. Which of course,
Yes, true.
Americans had never heard of chai, right? But anybody arriving from India says, wait a minute, you mean you don't have any chai? Devon said the best chai uses Nilgiri tea, and I will make this popular. And so I introduced him to somebody, Heather. Oh, I forget Heather's last name right now. And she had just started a little company in her mother's kitchen called Oregon Chai. And
Wow.
so I said, Heather, meet Devin. Devin has the kind of tea that you need to use to make chai, such as you remember having in India. Heather listened to me. She and Devin became friends. It wasn't long before Oregon tea had imitators all over. And by the time Heather had outgrown the company, or you could say the company outgrew her, she was a tea person, not a tycoon. And so it was time for somebody else to take over Oregon Chai. And she sold it for $26 million. Now,
Bravo.
that was an enterprise that
Yeah.
started in your mother's kitchen. And so one of the great satisfactions of my life, now that I'm this old, is to have seen so many of my tea friends succeed on the scale that they have. And now, of course, America couldn't exist without chai.
Right.
That's the doings of Devin Shaw. Devin and I went around the world together. He took me home with him to India 4 times, just as I went back to China with Roy 4 times. I went to Taiwan with Jason Chen and Thomas Shu. So I can recommend this life to anybody who's interested in having deep friendships and exciting adventures.
That's a great story about chai because I am drinking chai once a day at least. And yes, now I know who to thank. Devon Shaw. And you,
And we have a story. We have a story for matcha also. And
please tell me.
Americans were not even vaguely aware of matcha until the tea renaissance, thanks to no single person. But now Americans could hardly do without matcha.
It's a
And
top, really high growth selling tea, matcha, green tea.
absolutely. And so these things are proceeding. And the tea business evolves, we will certainly see more things like bubble tea.
Yes, boba tea. Yes, that grew out from Taiwan.
Yeah, I know. And now, these things leave me behind because, to tell you the truth, I'm interested in the pure leaf and what it has
Yes.
to tell me. And so I'm not going to drink bubble tea or other things, but I encourage others to do it. Myself, I don't care. I don't care what people do with it. They can bathe in it as long as they will pay for it. If they will just buy it and support some of my friends in China and India who are growing it and making it, they will also be healthier and happier.
Absolutely.
And that's my attitude.
Now, you had served 10 years or so as a contributing editor for Tea Time magazine, and
Yes.
you write about the romance of tea. Can
Yes.
you talk about that experience?
Yes. Yeah. Tea Time, edited by Lorna Reeves, is our leading tea magazine in this country today. And for a long time, there wasn't one. And there was a newsletter that I used to column to called Tea Talk. And there was Tea, a magazine by Pearl Dexter in Connecticut. But these were very limited. And Tea Time had the force and the money of the Hoffman Tea Media Company to make to be permanent. So they've been in existence for quite a while. And at first they were just what I call doily ghetto publication. Tea, when we first they started waking up, it was the preserve of ladies who lunch. And they would often go to have tea with other ladies who lunch.
Yeah.
And the talk was always about the linens and the chinaware and how nicely the scones had turned out. But nobody talked about the tea. because, of course, the tea was secondary. That's no longer true. And the Tea magazine has done a good job of bridging the gap between what used to be worthy of the name the Doily Ghetto, and those people are now drinking matcha and other things, along with their Earl Grey, and more power to them. The
Ye-
columns that I wrote for the magazine were always about my friends who were a committed couple who had had a career in the tea world. John and Elise Harney being perhaps my first example. Bruce Richardson and Shelley, just as
Correct.
an example, and others. So
That's why you were called the romance in the chest of tea that just waiting to be recognized, isn't it?
it is. It is.
The romance of tea.
And the romance goes
Mhm.
beyond the courtship over the cups.
Yes, I like that courtship
Uh,
over the cups.
the romance goes all the way back to that farmer who is giving loving attention to those plants, all the way back to those women who were plucking that leaf, as they had to do for thousands of years before machinery came into use.
Yes, I love the fact that you brought it back to the tea leaves, and we don't even look at tea leaves anymore, or just a tea bag, but bringing it back to the tea leaves, reading the tea leaves
Yes,
helps us, in fact, connect to the earth and to heaven.
yes. Now, the great thing about China tea is that attention is focused totally on that leaf. That is the source of all the goodness
Mm.
he has to give us. And after all, we took a seriously wrong turn when we ground the leaf up and put it in little bags so that you wouldn't even see the leaf.
I
The
agree.
method of taking tea, since at least the Ming Dynasty, has been the covered cup. You put the leaf right in the cup, you pour the water straight onto the leaf, and you watch the what's called the agony of the leaves as that leaf unfurls and releases all of the flavor that has been preserved in its dried form. And so uh, tea is water's best friend.
Yes, you're right. They're tea soulmates.
Yes. And so as you watch the leaf react to the water and release its goodness, you take a sip from your gaiwan. The lid holds the leaf back, so you don't have to spit your leaf. And after you've used the gaiwan a few times, it's second nature. And here you are, face to face with the leaf itself as it unfurls. Now, of course, great tea will steep more than once.
Absolutely. 无一 tea, 岩
And,
茶, 10
and
times, 20 times all day long.
that's right. And in China, you would often see people in mid-afternoon who've been drinking that same leaf since probably breakfast time. I don't know.
I do the same. Uh-huh.
I have done it, yeah, but I'm always eager to try the next. So I don't pay as much attention, probably as I should, to the third and fifth infusions. But
You get bored. You are
well,
such a tea snob.
but I have done it. I think I'm too impatient to try the next.
I think you're right about reading the tea leaves. Until I made the tea documentary, I was in Wuyi Mountains, and as the signature characteristic of Yancha, the rock tea, Wuyi rock tea, oolong, it's red edges and green leaves. And I did not know that characteristic, Norwood. And to know that and starting to look at the oolong tea leaves from Wuyishan.
Yes, and how broad the rim of red is will tell you what's happened to that leaf.
Yes,
Much, how much,
leading,
that's,
rolling,
and
and firing.
and that the outer side
Yes, the outer
of the
edges.
leaf, and
Yes,
which is bruised
Yes.
in the rotation.
And that's where we captured in the
Yeah.
documentary was the tea making process that created that red edges and green leaves. And that is just so beautiful. And I think that's why Norwood right now we talk about as we become, we are all living in an increasingly digital age, that we are constantly being bombarded by ding dings, emails, and phones, and social media, what have you. I think it's more important for us to have an internal ritual of tea, and that it really helps me personally to calm down. How do you see this?
Same as you, and same as our friend Wu De in Taiwan, probably know, is the founder of the Global Tea Hut. He's an American guy, Ohio origin, I believe. And I'm proud to claim him as one of the early readers of that book you and
Book.
Bruce.
Yes. Yay.
And anyway, I played my part in setting Wu De, his American name is Aaron Fisher. I helped him find his calling to tea, and he's pursued it religiously, and I use that word advisedly. He has taken Buddhist orders, so he's an ordained Buddhist monk. That's where his name Wu De comes from. He doesn't go by Aaron.
Yeah, his Buddhist monk name.
That's
Correct.
right. And we have no deeper student of tea in our generation than he. And I only wish that I had been young enough to crawl under his wing and learn from him.
Maybe I get to learn from him, from the sisterhood of tea.
Yes, that's right. It's the same thing. Brotherhood, sisterhood.
Yes, yes, we're all tea people.
That's right.
I noticed that Norwood Cheers, that's really good tea. What are you drinking? Which tea?
I am drinking a tea that I've just discovered in the past couple of years. Red Dragon.
Ah,
It's from Yunnan.
Yunnan.
And do you know about it?
No, is it pu'er tea?
No. This is a Taiwan cultivar.
Okay,
In Taiwan, it's used exclusively for oolong.
okay.
And in Yunnan, it is made into black tea. So,
Ah,
of course, it's Hong Cha
Hong cha, 对.
in Mandarin, and Hong being red. Right?
Yes,
So this is Red Dragon, not
Red Dragon Hong cha, made in Yunnan,
from Taiwan oolong.
from Taiwan oolong. Oh
Cultivar.
boy, that's okay. An oolong cultivar grew in Yunnan. Are they using the oolong technique to make it or using pu'er's technique to make it?
I'd say it's more the black tea techniques because it's very beautifully rolled,
Mm.
and very large leaf, and it is definitely not a poor manufacture method, but it has a taste unlike any other. And
Ah.
that's what I'm drinking at the moment.
Oh my goodness, it looks delicious. I wish I was near you and then I can have a cup.
We would share it,
Yes,
and I would send you home with some of my supply.
exactly.
I get it from Blue Willow in Berkeley.
Blue Willow. Okay, in Berkeley.
That's right. That's the friend who has that tea house, that company.
Now you just taught me a new tea, which is very exciting because now this is why Norwood, I think that back into from the 1500s to the mid 1800s, tea is such an enigma. And this is why, because now, even if for those who are beginning in their tea journey, the fact that it's an oolong cultivar grown in Pu'er mountains and using the black tea method to cure it becomes a black tea. That I was like, what?
Exactly. It takes some explaining, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
And all you have to do is smell the aroma to say, boy, I'd really love to have some of that.
I like that.
It has the oolong characteristic of being flamboyantly aromatic.
Yes.
Now, returning to John Harney, his first break, all right, actually, his first break required no advice from anybody. He sent his daughter, Elise, named for her mother. He said, I want you to go to the Waldorf Astoria Hotel and ask to speak to the director of food and beverage. And I know the man, he will never refuse an interview to a pretty girl. You just go and say you're there for a conference about tea. And Miss Harney, and I don't think Elise the younger was married at the time. She was still Miss Harney. And she said, my father sent me to ask you to taste the tea that Waldorf Astoria is serving and taste ours beside it and tell me which one you'd like to have more of. That was the total sales pitch.
He knows how to sell.
Which one would you like to have more of? And he said, I've never heard of Harney tea. And she said, this is what Norwood Pratt says. And so John had sent her with that first tea book that mentioned him and says, so there's your credibility statement. No, it shows that we do exist and other people have noticed he's not the first. And so anyway, he says, I like your tea. And she says, we'll send you some. Sales closed. And John went on to sign up something like 600 leading American hotels because starting at the top, the Waldorf likes it.
You've got to have it.
That's so after the Waldorf account, he's moved in on the Plaza Hotel. And he says, you have the famous Palm Court where you've served tea ever since the Plaza was founded in 1890. And let me make you a tea that will be the Palm Court blend. And so they said, oh, great, come back, we'll try it. So then John calls me up and says, Norwood, I've got to make a Palm Court. Anyway, it was wonderful. I was the one that suggested you have to add a dash of Formosa oolong, as in these days we call it Taiwan.
Formosa oolong, the old name.
And this will distinguish it from all other black tea blends. And so John did. The Palm Court bought it. John is still selling, Harney and Sons is still selling Palm Court blend, and you should try it. I think you'll find that the oolong adds a certain je ne sais quoi to the black tea.
Of course.
And of course,
yes,
people have been coming back to the Palm Court
blend. What is it called? What did you name it? I know you have a wayward word.
That's the Palm Court
blend. Okay, it's called Palm Court blend.
That's
okay.
Right.
And it's black tea mixed with a touch of Formosa oolong.
That's right. Perhaps a sixth, not overpowering, but.
And do they serve it with milk?
I'm sure you could ask for milk. I would advise against it, but
I would advise against it too.
I never tell anybody how they should have their tea.
Yes, there's tea freedom. I love that story. That's quite ingenious.
It worked, didn't it?
Yes, it certainly.
And that blend that exists today is quite wonderful.
One of my interesting tea story discovery in making the tea film was that before the tea film, I've been working for Sony Pictures for a lot of years in Asia. And when I was in Taiwan, and I traveled there quite often, I fell in love with Dongding Oolong. And I loved that tea. So I thought that was the origin of oolong tea. Little did I know that the Wei Oolong, the Yan Cha that you talked about, was actually the beginning, the origin of oolong, and it went across the strait.
That's exactly right.
In the monk's bag, like you said. Yes.
Yeah, and the Chinese people who immigrated to Taiwan and settled there were, of course, mainly from directly across the strait,
福建，对，
which is Fujian province. They have their own dialect,
yeah.
Hokkien, and they have their own cuisine, which is a lot less, it has a spicy character in Fujian. And an interesting contrast with the kind of food that comes from the green tea areas.
Yes.
Zhejiang has very subtle flavors and spicy because they drink green tea with their meals. And the Fujian people drink oolong tea with their meals, and so the spice level is much higher.
And Sichuan uses pu'er tea, and so it's like exactly like wine pairing, isn't it?
And we learn these things traveling around and drinking tea with others, and then being invited to stay for supper.
Long enough, you're gonna have breakfast.
That's right. Exactly.
That's so great. Norwood, you have such a fantastic and a magical way of describing things and putting words together. I really enjoy reading your books, and your writing purely has a magical quality. Like, I can't wait to just read more. In your Tea Time magazine, for example, you specialized in tea couples, couples in the tea business, which I thought was really unique. What draws you to those deeply human stories, which I think it's very compelling, right? And nowadays is all about emotional resonance and all that. But you've done that many decades ago. What draws you to it?
Love. Tea can open our hearts to one another. And I think anytime our hearts are open to others, it would be hard not to love them a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to make friends over a pot of tea. And the people I wrote about were friends that I came to love through tea. And we all had our angle. I was a writer. My writing, wine, tea, anything, is I'm a poet of the appetites. And so that's what I'm trying to convey. And and so other people who share your love are easy to love back, aren't they?
Absolutely. It's the tea connection. And you first have the tea love, like you said, the calling of tea, which is, and everybody has the same calling
Amongst those who do, and that's right.
in the tea business.
And then, of course, we make no secret of the secret words, the names of our favorite drinks. And so if you haven't ever heard of Yan Cha from Blue Mountains, let me fix you some. You'll love this.
Yeah.
That's our impulse immediately, just to share what we love. And I think that explains the growth of tea everywhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the love. And you described it really nicely the other day when we talked. You said tea can calm you down and excite you. Do you mind sharing that with our listener?
Yeah, that's right. And if you are overheated, it will cool you. And if you're too chilly, it'll warm you up. And it'll do all of those things. And what I've noticed is that the theanine in tea, which is the chemical component that soothes the human's nervous system, that's the first thing you feel. That kicks in before the caffeine does. And
that's why it's softer.
I think so. That's right. The caffeine takes a little longer to come into effect. Tea is the only thing that we have discovered in all of nature which has both effects at the same time.
Yes.
It both energizes you, that's the caffeine effect, and also soothes,
Calms.
calms you.
Mhm.
That's the theanine effect. We could go a lot further into its benefits, but just leave it at that.
Leave it at that. I like that. So now you've been called the consummate spokesman for UST consumers, and you help spread the gospel of tea to tens of thousands of people. As you look into tea's outlook moving forward, how do you feel tea's continuing evolution in America?
Now that tea has taken root here, we will become not just a tea consuming country, but a tea producing country
Mm.
on a very small scale, of
Mm.
course. But people who have the real green thumb and are really attracted to tea oftentimes start their own little garden. And I have several dozen such friends who are growing tea for their own interest. I don't think many of them plan to sell it, but other people are making very creditable tea in this country. They're good farmers. Look at Jason McDonald and the great Mississippi Tea Company.
Mm.
If you've never tried any of his Black Magnolia, let me recommend it.
Mm.
It's a very respectable, enjoyable American-grown black tea.
Huh. Okay.
From Brookhaven, Mississippi, my dear. You ain't gonna
Wow.
get anything more authentic.
That is phenomenal. Where do I get it?
Just look up Mississippi Tea Company,
Okay.
and
That's great.
that would be a good start.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, for our listener who have just begun their tea journey,
Yeah,
what would you want them to understand about this divine drink, ancient plant?
it'll make you feel good. You will like the way it makes you feel. That explains why tea has a history that goes back 5,000 years. Drinking tea is something people have gotten together to do since the pyramids were under construction, Christy. When you think about it,
Truly.
that was 5,000 years ago, and that's just about the time that those Chinese fathers who were forefathers of the Taoists up in the mountains, trying all the leaves they could to see what would taste good. And they said, hey, now this would, it doesn't taste too good, but it makes you feel good. It took them a couple thousand years to get the taste to where they liked it, but they didn't stop trying.
If the Egyptians were to have, what kind of tea do you think they will be taken to?
If the Egyptians, back when they were building pyramids,
Uh-huh.
would have had any tea, which they couldn't.
If.
Yeah, if. Why, I think that they would probably have most enjoyed green tea. Now, I'm not sure that green tea had been invented even in China at the time, but green tea is cooling, and Egypt is hot. So
Correct.
I think that the green tea sales would have outstripped others in that climate.
And that before they even discovered, perhaps, the green tea's magnificent health benefits.
Yeah.
I think an Egyptian food would probably support that because it's not that heavy.
I don't know Egypt. I do know Moroccan mint tea.
Oh, yes.
And of course, they're light on the tea and heavy on the mint in Morocco. And it's a delicious drink. I wish they add a little more tea.
I think I would agree with you, Norwood, that
You would?
if they would have tea then, I probably would say perhaps iced green tea.
Yeah.
But those two have not been invented.
That's right. And you could enjoy it best in the shade of a pyramid.
Absolutely. Now, if you could steep the perfect cup to represent your work in tea, what would be in that blend?
Christy, you're my tea sister and fellow tea lover, and that would vary with the time of year.
True.
And I think that the perfect tea for me in the summertime would be a Lushan Yunwu. It's one of the smallest productions of China tea, and it's probably very hard to find in America. I've only had it through Roy Fong, and I'm not sure Roy can still get it, but we sure got it, and we sure have never forgotten. And find something that delicate at anywhere would be something you'd never forget.
Now, Lushan, that tea, is it a white tea, yellow tea?
No, it's a green tea.
A green tea, okay.
And it comes from an island which is south of Hunan, north of Hunan, south of Hubei, and it was grown by monks originally, and a very limited area of production, and which just has the perfect climate for that particular cultivar and the perfect devotion from those particular tea growing monks.
This is what fascinates me in the tea realm. Every day, you learn something new.
Yes, you do.
It's bottomless.
Now, all of the earliest China teas that we have names for come from mountains where there were Buddhist monasteries, mostly starting in Sichuan and spreading from there. It took centuries for growing tea farming to spread from the interior all the way down to the coast. And of course, they were pioneering all the way. Look at that. That kind of tea doesn't like it in this weather or down here in this soil. So by the time they'd been prospecting and pioneering for centuries, they knew exactly where to grow green or any other.
It's the terroir. Yes.
The exploration is unending.
Unending. Yes. Now, last question for you. You're a writer, you're a tea lover, you've been in this tea realm longer than I have.
Yes.
And if you had to say something about what tea means to you, how would you describe tea?
Tea is a calling, and you're very lucky if you hear the call. And tea is a friend, and it will do all the things we've said. If you are overheated, it'll cool you. And if you're too chilly, it'll warm you. And if you're too excited, it'll cool you off. And if you're phlegmatic and unenergized, it'll pep you up. It'll be hard to find a better friend than that.
Beautiful, my tea friend. Thank you for your time.
Tea sister, my pleasure.
Thank you all for listening and for this amazing sharing of tea stories with our tea teacher, American tea sage, Norwood Pratt. His book, highly recommended by the way, is the new edition, Tea Lover's Treasury. It's on Amazon, along with an audio copy version. Enjoy the read and enjoy this cup.